Hello, welcome back to the Mr. Arsenal podcast for something that's different. As I would say, I haven't done this before because the channel isn't old enough to have been doing it this long. But we are doing a World Cup preview, if you will. We're going to, obviously, as I say, it's a very controversial World Cup. We'll get into as well. As you can see, I'm joined by James Rowe, who is back in the Netherlands as well, since we last spoke to him. But yeah, how you doing, James? And yeah.
Very well, thank you, Ryan. Pleased to be speaking about football and the World Cup. And for all the controversy and for all the opinions, we're about to watch a football tournament, which only happens once every 4 years. I'm feeling quite old because this is my 9th World Cup. It makes me feel quite old. It's my 9th World Cup. I was a little bit too young for Mexico '86. I mean, in terms of conscience and witnessing it live, but Italia 90 was where this journey kicked off. And I just feel that this is also the last World Cup before this once massive barometer of the highest level is ruined forever and consigned to history, because the next World Cup is held in 3 countries. It's actually America's World Cup, but and a couple
America,
of games
Canada,
will be played
Mexico.
in Mexico and Canada, but in theory it's America's World Cup, and the participants go to 48 nations. It's not a meeting, it's a football tournament. If you're not good enough, then you have to make sure you qualify next time round. So
that's the whole point, isn't it? That's the whole point. That's the whole point of qualifying, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, environmentalists are not going to be very happy with me, Ryan. But if I was the boss of FIFA, what I would do, I would have pan-world qualifying. I would have England going to the Ivory Coast. I would have Ivory Coast coming to Wembley. I would have the Netherlands going to Chile, Chile coming to the Netherlands, and so on and so on and so on. Environmentalists might not be very happy with me, but if you want to really help people to understand about world football, and it's a world game, I mean, you imagine the story, the human story of a team such as Cameroon rocking up in Budapest to play Hungary and to take them on, and the people that might have their reasons for acting like they do, which is there's no reason for it. It's a complete disgrace. But they are confronted then with a team who could literally, maybe in a footballing sense, teach them a lesson, and therefore in society teach them a lesson. So, but I'm not the boss of FIFA. But I'm going to enjoy this World Cup. There's so many stories and so many things to write about. It will be a World Cup that will have many surprises. I don't think people realise the element of surprise in this particular World Cup. You know, with the time of year, with the participants, with the pressure on certain nations. So I'm going to enjoy it, because you get a lot of people saying, "Oh, I'm not going to watch it," but a World Cup is it's like a moment in time. It's like a moment in your life. I mean, I reflect on my very first World Cup in the Netherlands. It hit me like a train. I'd moved to the Netherlands the year before, and obviously, you know, your life isn't dictated by a World Cup. You move to a different country deliberately, and you do everything properly. Yeah. But it dawned on me a year later, oh, I got a World Cup. And it was the first World Cup I ever had in abroad as an Englishman, and that was a massive thing. You know, it was great to speak to Dutch people about their team and the group that the Netherlands was in. And I predicted the winner, but I couldn't find a betting shop. And I couldn't find a betting shop. It's absolutely true.
You had a year.
Absolutely true. I predicted the winner about 3 months before. And I went to my place of work at the time, and they all said to me, "How much did you win?" I said, "I didn't." He said, "You didn't put any money on it?" I said, "No, I couldn't find a betting shop because I'm not that way inclined."
Yeah,
I couldn't find one. And then obviously you learn from your mistakes, and I backed France in 2018. I got it wrong in 2010, and I got it wrong in 2014. But you know, you can't always get it right. But I think this World Cup will have a massive element of surprise.
Yeah. In terms of obviously, before we touch on certain things that will be brought up in the that are being brought up in the chat already by one of our viewers. This is, I think, this in terms of the footballing side of things, this is going to be the first World Cup that I can say since 2006 where it isn't, for me anyway, a clear favourite. Like, there's not one team that stands out. It's like that team's definitely getting to the final at the very least, if not winning it. There's 8 or 9 teams that could win this, and it's complete, as they say, the pun goes, a complete lottery who gets there. It's not from a taking out our perspective of England, and obviously you're English, but you live in Holland as well. It's refreshing to have that. It's not. Anyone can get to that final and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, as I say, 2006 was a complete out of nowhere. He won it. No one would have called it, but that was the World Cup, the last one I can remember. It was where
I called it.
Did you call Italy? Okay, fair enough.
I called it in 2006, and I'll tell you the reason why. Sorry to interrupt you there.
No, it's fine.
Great point. I'll let you continue. I kept telling everybody the balance. They've got great balance. You know, Totti, Camoranesi, Gattuso, and Marcello Lippi as their manager. And I kept like breaking it down because at that time I was gaining more and more confidence in Dutch to speak. I was never shy, but when you learn a foreign language,
as you learn it,
it comes in stages. And I felt more comfortable talking about football than politics. So I would go out of my way to explain.
The safe bit.
Yeah,
the safe bit.
I would go out of my way to explain things. And it didn't surprise me that Italy won it, and it was a great surprise. And I think this World Cup is really going to see it. You've got people shouting from the rooftops about this player being overrated, that player being underrated. Every World Cup, however clued up you are, every World Cup there is somebody that arrives that you didn't know anything about. Like in the case of 2006. I knew nothing about Fabio Grosso, nothing. And then obviously he scores the winning penalty. He concedes the penalty upon which they go through when they beat Australia. And I since learned that, you know, he played for Palermo, was very much of a late bloomer, went on to play for Lyon as well. And you can trace that through history. You know, I remember my first ever World Cup with Cyril Makanaki with the dreadlocks from Cameroon, 1994 with Kenneth Anderson, 1998 with Davor Suka, 2002. Oh, it's been I think with 2002. Obviously, Ronaldinho came on the scene.
Ronaldinho and Ronaldo redeemed himself from 28.
2006, Fabio Grosso, and so on and so on and so on. You know, it's a moment in time, and I just think that people have got to enjoy. We've got to enjoy this World Cup. You know, international football is so watered down now, where people they're kind of afraid to bang the drum and say, I am what I am, which it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. It's something where the countries come together, people come together, even people that have no interest in football will watch their national team because their national team reflects the postman, it reflects the doctor, reflects the scaffolder or the warehouse worker. You know, and I just think that we've got to enjoy this World Cup, and I am intent on enjoying it.
Yeah, in terms of what you just... One sec. Sorry about that. No, in terms of what you just said about people want to be happy to be what they want to be. Someone mentioned it already in the chat, Nemeth, about I'll get the comment up in a second, bear with me a moment. And he's saying I'd love a footballer to come out as gay in the World Cup and see what happens. Again, I don't have what aspect of social media on nowadays, but there has been... Started off with Going Lineker, sorry, not Neville. Going Lineker saying in the last couple of weeks he's come out himself and said that he knows 2 players in the Premier League that he knows are gay, and he wants them to use the World Cup as a platform to come out. And I'm like, and then since then there's since then, in the last week or so, there's come out that Channel 4 have done a documentary. It's to be released over the weekend where apparently, I don't know if it's true or not, two players that play for the same club are dating each other. And again, for me, no problem. Obviously, 21st century, as long as they're happy, it doesn't bother me. And then obviously it showed the development from John Fashanu when he came out, and we all know what happened, obviously, all the way back then. So it showed our development from our perspective.
Yeah, with Justin, yes.
And I've said, in terms of women's game, I've said it could be Beth Mead currently dates Vivian Miedemar. They both dated Lisa Evans and Danielle van der Donk previously, and it's always been more accepted in the women's game. Players being dating each other, being gay, basically. Whereas the men's game, it took a while to get to that stage where it's more accepted, and we only start to see our own players, like homegrown players, be it League One, League Two, whatever. I think Jack Daniels. I can't remember his name. I think Jack Daniels or something Daniels. Anyway, for Blackpool.
Jake Daniels. I think he played for. Did he play for Blackpool?
Blackpool, yeah. He's come out recently in the last about 6 or 7 months. He came out himself and said, "I've tried to hold it in night, but I can't. I am what I did." And again, I didn't go deep into researching it in terms of the reception, but from what I saw from people I follow and they follow me, etc., the reception you got was fantastic. Obviously, we know social media is idiots out there, troll and be twats and whatever.
Unreal.
But for me, why is there lots of going in there saying, I know the laws over there, what they are, and that's another matter we might get into, we might not. But why potentially throw these players under the bus like that? Why put that pressure on them? Why can't they just, if they want to come out publicly, come out whenever they want? Why have we got to go? Well, because it's against the law over there, and it's make a statement against this country. You got to do it there. Why have you just done that to them?
Well, first and foremost, Ryan, I think it's a great point from Nemeth. First and foremost, it's a great point. As you say, who is Gary Lineker to dictate or to suggest what players can do? First and foremost, you've got to think about the personal life of that player. You've got to think about their personal life, not just their direct partner or their life, but also maybe their family lives. And you've got to live and let live, as the saying goes. And it will be very interesting to see what happens. It will be very, very interesting to see what happens. You wonder if a player would do that. I'm convinced that something will happen, but I don't know what. It could be anything from a pitch invasion with invasion with the rainbow flag, to a spat, to a disagreement, to anything. But we have to remember as well that this is it's a football tournament. This football tournament in 4 years goes somewhere else. And after the 4 years after that goes somewhere after that. We've got to remember, we didn't pick where the World Cup is held. We didn't pick that. But as fans of the sport and fans of the country, we will watch it. I mean, I found it quite absurd for people to say, I'm not going to watch it. But if you're a football fan, of course you're going to watch it. Because I'm telling you now, if you don't, you're going to regret it. Because in your life, you will think, oh, I wish I'd have watched it now. Because you can't turn back time. I mean, I remember when England used to get knocked out of tournaments when I was a young child. And I would say, I don't want to watch the final. And then you think, well, no, I am going to watch the final. So it's people learning and taking their opportunities, but as well as fantastic points being made and relevant points being made, which they are, and absolutely correct. We've got to remember as well that this is a football tournament, and we've got to enjoy the football on offer, because we're going to see some amazing things. We are, and we're going to see some great goals. We're going to see some surprises. Every World Cup has a surprise semi-finalist. And this year will be no different. I tell you that now. In my life, England in Italia 90, USA 94, Sweden, 98 Croatia, 2002 South Korea, 2006 Portugal, 2010 Uruguay, 2014 the Netherlands,
Even Ghana in
2000
2010 as well.
yeah, and 2018 as well. With nobody expected Croatia to reach the final, and then in 2022 could be an African country. I would so dearly love a ninth country to win the World Cup. I really would, because you have to remember, Ryan, there have only ever been 8 countries that have won the World Cup. So I think for all the voices and all the opinions, it would also be a statement for the world game if a ninth country were to win it. And obviously I'll be supporting England, being English. I'll be keeping an eye on the Netherlands, living in their country for almost 2 decades as I have. Being a huge admirer of Brazil, as I've always been, I shall be keeping an eye on those 3 countries in particular. But I'm looking forward to seeing how Uruguay get on. I'm looking forward to seeing how Tunisia get on and Morocco. And I think a point which is not being made enough, all African participants have a manager from that country. And that's a fantastic thing. That needs to be celebrated. People need to know their names. People need to know the names of Rigobert Song. People need to know the names of Aliou Cissé. People need to know their names and remember their names, because it's fantastic, achievement for the continent, and it lays the base for an eventual African winner. I'm not saying it's going to happen now, but the base has been laid now, where they realise for the heart, because this is what international football is all about. It's about the best of one country coming up against the best of another. And once you start mixing it, then what are we doing? If you're going to mix it, and if you're going to have it completely diluted, then what are we doing? Should we just pack up and go home? Because what people need to understand, Ryan, is that the nation which represents their country that are maybe unfancied or not liked, they are giving the incentive to the next generation. The people see that at home and they think, oh, if they can do it, I can do it. So I'm really looking forward to some great matchups and so many surprises.
Yeah, I think that what politics aside for a second, all the politics and everything, all the controversies come with Qatar winning this World Cup when it did, along with Russia previously at the same time. The one thing that I think has really irked people was that they won the World Cup on the basis that it would have been held in normal circumstances in our summertime. And 6 months later, they decided, actually, guys, it's going to be too hot for the fans, too hot for the players. Can we move it for a few months behind? And people just went, yeah, okay, no problem. And I mean, I think that's what irked people, that you've, instead of doing your background check, it's sort of rammed home the controversy that surrounded this. Well, not just this World Cup, but the Russia World Cup as well, because they got announced within 10 minutes, literally, of each other. I remember on the day seeing the announcement, because obviously we were bidding for the 2018 World Cup. And for the first time, I think it's the first time, that FIFA decided, no, we're going to make an announcement for 2018 and the following one, instead of doing it one by one, like they normally do. And the fallout from there on in, but then doing what they did a few months later, doing Qatar saying what they said and getting their way eventually by Sepp Blatter, sort of round it home for people that the controversy, this and the other. That sort of put people off. It's like, well, it disrupts. Well, yeah, it obviously this could. I'm not saying it's gonna potentially disrupt us. But as Arsenal fans, we've waited so long to see our team competitive and being challenged for a title. Now we've had to put handbrake on, and now we're praying that our big players that are going to this World Cup, Saka, Ramsdale, Ben White, Tomiyasu, Partey, just naming a few here. Another fans will be the same for their respective clubs. We're now praying that our players don't come back fatigued and injured, because they've got, depending on how far certain countries go, and some of these players we mentioned play for big nationalities, and as you mentioned before, this century in terms of World Cups 2002 onwards, you always get the at least one outsider, if not occasionally two outsiders that go deep into this tournament.
Mm.
So
And
fatigue could be a major factor. And you've got the final on the 18th, but at the very least, the final. I'm not saying they're all going to go boom, but obviously they got the fatigue of coming from Qatar all the way back to the UK from our perspective, from English club perspective, and as they're coming over there, and then literally got next to no time to sort of recover, and then Boxing Day off we go again. And if your club didn't do what Arsenal and Tottenham and almost Liverpool did, Chelsea did as well, and sort of take a nosedive on the League Cup in terms of, well, is that the worst thing? Because literally, if we'd gone through to the next round on the 20th of 2 days after the World Cup final, we would have had another game to play. Either on the 2 days afterwards or the 3 days afterwards, and then we've got 3 days later the game at the Emirates. So we sort of, it's a blessing in disguise in that sense. Obviously, not having that extra game there slotted right in between, especially if we've got a bulk of our players that have gone, still not even come back yet. But you've got all that to contend with, and also, as I say, we're praying that our players don't get injured now, because if they do, and they get long-term injuries, that's a major factor that's going to go into the transfer window, and it pays a massive dividend to how we're going to operate then, because it changes everything then. Everything we sort of planned up to the point where they just go out the window with all due respect, and then you're starting again. And I think that, again, as I said, I think that's the main thing that's really, aside from the politics side of things, and certain things are rightly saying, and they have been mentioned in the chat. That's and from a footballing perspective, that's the thing that's really, from people like Melvin and all that, has really put them off this World Cup.
Well, I think when you've got countries like the Netherlands starting again in January, and countries like France starting again in January, I still can't believe, and I was at Molineux, and it was a great away day, fantastic support by the away fans. I still can't believe that the weekend before the World Cup that the games were not simultaneous, that all the English games didn't start at midday, all the Italian games didn't start at 2:00, all the Dutch games didn't start at 6:00, for example. I still struggle to believe that, but I think the way that different countries start in January and we start in Boxing Day because of tradition, like you say with the League Cup, for me, I was annoyed with the League Cup because factually, the one chance to win the one of 4 trophies on offer is now gone. There's only 3 left.
That sort of thing I was annoyed and I vented off.
And that's what's annoyed me, because you can't pick and choose what you win. You see people saying, oh, we've won the FA Cup enough times, I want to win it again. We are doing really well in the league. But remember 2003 when we were 5 points clear in March? Remember 2009 when we also had a lead? For me, I'm delighted with Arsenal top, but it was always about collecting as many points as you can before the World Cup starts. And great to top the Europa League group and to avoid that playoff round in February to give us time there.
So especially if we had finished second, we now know who we would have got. And if we come second, we would have got Sevilla. And I'll be honest, out of all the teams we could have got, that as a one team, that and Shakhtar were the 2 teams from the dropping down that would have worried me. And we would have got one of them. So,
but they look awful. They look awful.
I mean, but they've got a pedigree. They've got winning pedigree. That's my point.
Absolutely, Ryan. That is a fantastic point, and I agree with you on that 100%. But they look awful. They are in a relegation scrap. And I remember the Emirates Cup. Yeah. I remember the Emirates Cup game, which was my first game of the season.
6-1.
It started late because I think they arrived late, and their warm up was late. They looked shattered. But I realised that 10 days before, they were playing football in South Korea. So even as a professional footballer, with all the trimmings and with all the luxury, it's got to knacker you out to play football in South Korea, Spain, and London within 10 days. Of course, that's going to knacker you right out. And obviously, Rakitic is a fine player. Bono, the Moroccan goalkeeper's very good. They've got some good players as well. But, I mean, to think that Sevilla could be dragged down, I mean, I don't think they will. But I think what they've done with Lopetegui was quite wrong. I think he would have kept them up. He's going to keep Wolves up. I think the way he's conducted himself is nothing short of marvellous. Shades of when Emery rocked up at Arsenal. And as you say, we now know who we would have got. But people look at me funny when I say to them, I'm not bothered about Barcelona, not bothered about Champions League dropouts. I am bothered about Real Sociedad. I am bothered about Real Betis. And I am bothered about Rennes. So I hope that when we speak about the last 16 draw, that I'm not discussing one of those teams, although...
Oh, God, don't say that.
But I will just be honest, you know, San Sebastian is a wonderful away day. I mean, I've only ever been there on holiday, but it's like a postcard. It's beautiful. So you imagine playing football there, you know, and I think if we draw Real Sociedad, I think I'd look to do both legs. But we won't know who we play until the 24th of February.
Yeah.
So we've got a long wait, and I maintain as well, Ryan, we will the 8 Champions League dropouts. I think maybe 4 of them will go through to the last 16 of the Europa League, maybe 4, but certainly not all 8.
No, because again, it could cause so much controversy as well. Because then it'd be like the last 16 will be what, half the Europa League teams and half Champions League. It just caused too much aggro as well from that perspective. But going back to the World Cup, obviously, what we are, let's try half hour in. So we're going to obviously where you are. You're in Holland. We're speaking yesterday. Was again my head's all over the place with this bloody jab that I've had put me in my backside all week. But hence my apologies last night. Because anyway, it doesn't have me and James were trying to sort this out yesterday. Timed it perfectly, by the way. Literally so spooky. It was like as he's. I was like, oh, okay, I've recorded and da-da-da-da. But either way, we're sorting it out, and I got my days mixed up. I thought yesterday was Tuesday, and today was going to be probably. And I realised, I was like, oh, sorry. So that it's almost didn't happen because it would have been my fault, by the way. But
not to worry. I think I speak for everybody on the channel that we hope you're feeling better, and your health comes first. That's the most. It's the most important thing.
Again, in terms of before we actually get into the inside of it, let's touch this. Yeah, Monday. The first few hours, no problem with the thing. Okay, no problem. I've had this particular vaccine. It's like Pfizer last time out, and little niggle, but it'll be fine because I did it before. Tuesday, woke up and I was just wiped. I was just completely wiped. I couldn't do anything. So I was spending literally the entire day, every few hours having tablets, but in bed, taking paracetamol and anti-sickness and wearing this bloody thing to stop the nausea. But aside from that, woke up yesterday, not brilliant, but better. And then, obviously, hence why I've reached out to you. And then today's been better, but still, there's still the headache side of things every now and then. But I'm keeping top of things now. But yeah, the worst of it seems to be over with, touch wood. But yeah, you was telling me yesterday in the voice notes about Van Gaal, and as everyone knows, Van Gaal he's currently undergoing treatment for cancer treatment. Going to go into the finer details of it all, but he's receiving treatment. He made the big announcement, even though he did make the announcement on Dutch TV. Was it in the summer? I think it was back end of the last season. He made the announcement. He said, "I'm not going to walk away. I'm going to stay until the end of the year, get the World Cup out of the way, and then January, New Year's Eve, I'll be leaving my post. New Year's Day will be a new man in charge."
Yeah,
so it gave the Netherlands as well, the FA at HQ, some time to obviously go and get someone they wanted. They've gone and reappointed Ronald Koeman, as we all know. I think I mentioned this to you before in terms of Ronald Koeman leaving the Dutch national team to go to Barca at the time, even though the emotional connection, I understand that, for Ronald Koeman with Barcelona. I think it was wrong timing for me. He should have stayed and because he was doing good work with the national team. He was developing this young, exciting, vibrant squad and rebuilding his career. It was sort of gone away from his Premier League time. especially at Everton, it's sort of gone wayward. And
Yeah.
for me, the time just didn't go well. Obviously, I got proven right, but he has been reappointed. He's going to be the new Holland Netherlands manager come New Year. But get back to it. You're saying, because you mentioned before that the goalkeeper, what goalkeeper you'd have as who you'd take as a goalkeeper number one.
Yeah.
And there's other players that have experienced players as well that's not been called up to this World Cup squad. It's caused a lot of questions.
Yes.
Literally, after I spoke to you as well, I was probably just people taking the mick at the time, because I'm seeing tweets and things like that. I'm taking the mick out of Van Gaal, saying that at their age, but the players are in the squad because of their age in terms of squad numbers. They've got this certain squad numbers represent an age or whatever.
Yeah.
It's completely, again, I don't know the ins and outs. So I'm going to leave it over to you now to explain, because again, with everything going on, I had no idea what's going on.
Well, first and foremost, Ryan, there is no doubt that Van Gaal is one of the best coaches of his generation, if not the best. If not the best.
Yeah, what he's achieved at Barcelona, Bayern Munich, even at United.
Yeah, he's very forthright, fantastic coach, believes in his methods. But it's as if this last World Cup is his last chance to become world champion, that he will forego all of that. Mark Flecken, who barely concedes any goals in the Bundesliga and in the Europa League, Freiburg are in the last 16. He's not in the squad. Now, I interviewed Mark Flecken when he was an unknown in the German second division. Nobody knew who he was. And I'm not saying it because I'm biased because I interviewed him. I also interviewed a goalkeeper that he did take, Andries Noppert. When I interviewed Andries Noppert, who's the third goalkeeper that Van Gaal has taken in this World Cup squad, he was playing for FC Dordrecht in the first division. And he had played in Italy for Foggia, and obviously signed for Go Ahead Eagles and in Heerenveen. And the way up in that respect is a fantastic goalkeeper and a shot stopper. But with Jeremy Frimpong, can't speak a word of Dutch. Not one word. But according to Van Gaal, understands Dutch, where the Dutch broadcaster NOS was even saying, does he need a translator? Because if older viewers may remember, do you remember Mauro Silva, who won the World Cup with Brazil in '94? He played for Ajax when Van Gaal was manager. And Van Gaal treated him very badly due to the fact that Mauro Silva couldn't speak Dutch. And Van Gaal gave him a torrid time. And the journalist, Jeroen Stekelenburg, has asked Van Gaal in his one-on-one interview, he said that you used to have a way of thinking with Ajax that, if your players can't speak Dutch, you can't communicate with them. And he said, but now, he said, in the case of Frimpong, you can't speak any Dutch, and you've taken him. And Van Gaal's response to that was, I now borrow players. So it's a little bit different. I'm not going to expect them and ask them to speak Dutch in such a short period of time. And it's as if he's throwing all of his kind of methods and way of being out of the boat, if you like, to become that world champion. I've also been fortunate enough, Ryan, to speak to Frans Hoek, who's his current goalkeeping coach. When I spoke to Frans, they wasn't involved in the national team, but they were reinstated. And he was saying about the unity of that they had in 2014. The preparation they had in 2014 was nothing short of world class. And Frans Hoek also worked under Johan Cruyff, and that's how everything's come together. And the experience that Frans Hoek had with Louis van Gaal at Bayern Munich and also Manchester United and the national team. But I just think that the omission of Botman, the omission of Danjuma, especially with his pace, I think is something that will come back to haunt them. Of course, praise is being heaped on Frenkie de Jong. Obviously, Matthijs de Ligt, and also Stefan de Vrij is a very good defender. It's not all about Virgil van Dijk. And I think a real key component in this team is Martin de Roon, because I've rated him ever since his days at Heerenveen. And Middlesbrough fans might say that I'm mad, but at Middlesbrough, he didn't really get a fair shot. He really didn't. I remember being at the Emirates when Arsenal drew 0-0 with Middlesbrough, and they could have won that game. And Martin Delone started along with Middlesbrough. Also had Gaston Ramirez, who I think hit the post. But there's nothing Martin Delone can do if a Middlesbrough side trying to stay up keeps Christian Stuani and Martin Delone on the bench for most games.
Yeah.
You know, Stuani scores goals for Girona, scores goals in La Liga, scores goals for Uruguay, but couldn't get a game in the Premier League. It was madness. But I think that,
like you say, it's like you've got that sort of talent, but you want to play, but you're, because, and I can understand from their perspective at the time, it's you want to contain and frustrate and counter, but you got to balance it, to balance the 11 out, and they didn't. They had the grade over Premier League proven striker.
Yeah,
and they didn't neutralise him properly that season either. So
yeah, madness, and for Aitor Karanka to have such experience playing and winning with Real Madrid, you know, you would think that you would know better, but maybe we don't know the exact ins and outs. But I think that you know, with the situation of Van Gaal, how will history judge him? You know, he failed to qualify in his first stint as national team manager in 2002 in Korea and Japan. And his response to that was he took over a squad with very strong characters who couldn't accept his methods and couldn't accept his way of thinking. And that's their fault, not his. Second time around, he reaches a World Cup. They reach the semi-final, they lose, and they get the third place playoff. And this World Cup, so if this World Cup goes south and they don't do as well as he thinks they're going to do, how will history judge him? Because that's something that I'm really, really interested in. I mean, I don't know if I'll get to speak to Van Gaal in the future. I know that the door was open, having interviewed Frans Hoek and many players that played under Van Gaal. But of course, at his current age of 71 and his health is the most important thing. I'm not sure if I'll get to speak to him in future. I would love to. I'd like to think that he would be enamoured with an English guy wanting to be able to speak to him in his mother tongue. I think that's been proven with Frans Hoek and many Dutch players through the years. So you just never know. But the most important thing is that he recovers fully and that he has a good World Cup. Because going back to my point, if they don't have a good World Cup, Ryan, how will the history of Dutch national team football, how will they judge him? Because that's also something very important.
Yes, I totally get that, especially if he's, as you say, the domestic club reputation he's built over the decades. And we look, he says about the experienced players and all that. First, the reason why they didn't cut off over 2002. So Edgar Davids, Bergkamp, De Boer, and all that. They were all an issue apparently. Going to him, Van der Sar. Come on, behave yourself. So, look, I understand. This is, as you say, this is his swan song. This is it now. There's no, even if his health does get better, and hopefully it does, as you say. I don't see him coming back out of retirement for the fifth, fourth, or how many times it's been now.
No. And
this is it.
Yes,
and
this is it. This is it.
Yeah, and I do believe it's like, as you say. I think he just got he's because he got so close to the last time. With Tim Krul, he did that not infamous, the famous last-minute sub with Tim Krul coming on for the penalty shootout and taking Steinberger off. It's Steinberger. I can't remember it wasn't in goal.
He took off Silerson and he replaced him with Tim Krul, and he's turned into a scientist. You know, where he was saying in the run up that with penalties we've come up with a new scientific discovery. You know, in terms of reaction times and that kind of thing. And you know, Tim Krul even said before the tournament, if you're gonna talk about statistics, then Tim Krul is right up there. But he kind of said, well, thanks, but no thanks. But I was saying to a lot of my Dutch colleagues and Dutch counterparts that it's not healthy to bring back one man 3 times in a period of 20 years. It's not healthy. No. As if he is the only one that can do the job. I said it's akin to England doing that with Sir Bobby Robson. Sir Bobby Robson had the opportunity to replace Kevin Keegan after Kevin Keegan resigned, but it didn't quite come off. But I said it's not healthy, and I just think that I think they'll come to rue the decision. Really, I do, and I just think that I look at myself as well. When I arrived in this country, Marco van Basten was the manager, and after Marco van Basten was, Van Basten would lean a lot on Cruyff in terms of opinion. They were fantastic friends. Cruyff helped Van Basten in many ways with his career, especially with his injuries. They were extremely close. And Van Basten, even now, he's the best analyst on Dutch TV. I mean, when you listen to him speak, I mean, I look at the BBC and they say we've got, Michael Richards, Alan Shearer and Gary Lineker. Well, there's a Dutch football show called Rondo where they have on the same panel Ruud Gullit and Marco van Basten on the same panel talking about all things football. And Van Basten is just, you don't hear a peep out of him. It's like Dennis Bergkamp. You don't hear a peep out of them. That they lead their lives. And I had a nice surprise. You talk about the jab you received. I had a good colleague of mine. He went to receive his jab, and who was standing in front of him? None other than Marco van Basten. And they have a mutual acquaintance. So when you had your jab in the Netherlands, you had to sit down for 15 minutes and recover.
Yeah, same here.
And my colleague was speaking to Marco van Basten, and he said, I've got a friend called James Rowe, and he interviews many Dutch players, including most recently Brian Rowe, who you played with. And apparently Marco van Basten said the following. He said, it sounds great, sounds really professional, but at the minute, I'm not giving any interviews at all. So, but I was still pleased with my colleague and my friend to mention it to Marco van Basten. And, arguably the greatest Dutch striker there's ever been. If you're talking about an out-and-out striker. And it's just when you listen to him speak, it's like Johan Cruyff. When I would listen to Johan Cruyff and, I understood when he would, obviously, we would always hear him in English. Same with Dennis Bergkamp. We'd always hear him in English. But when you listen to him in their mother tongue, it blows your mind. Blows your mind.
I can't imagine,
there's a fantastic video for people that have time. There's a video on YouTube with English subtitles where Johan Cruyff is explaining the diamond system. And there's a fantastic quote that he says, in which normally it translates as the following. He says, well, normally when you want to help somebody, you think about going towards somebody, walking towards somebody. But you help somebody more in terms of creating space on the pitch if you walk away from them. And it sounded so simple, but just so clever. And I just think, this country, we here in the Netherlands, that we are not whiter than white. We are also going through certain problems, as every European country is. But the World Cup is a great opportunity for people to come together. And that's the most important thing, for people to come together and to talk about football and listen to each other's opinions. And, I had my first World Cup here in 2006. And I remember the back pages when they got knocked out by Portugal, where Van Basten was saying it's not a disgrace to go out in the last 16. But he didn't think that.
Well, Vigo and all that. It's still a good Portugal side as well.
Absolutely. And then obviously in 2010, where the ultimate almost happened, which nobody expected. Yeah. And I remember friends calling me on the morning of the game and asking me for a prediction, upon which I said 1-0 Spain, David Villa. And they were all so disappointed. I said, look, I live in your country. This country has been so good to me.
I want them to win.
I want you to win, but if you're asking me, this is what I think will happen. And the thing about 2010, for people that don't know, is that after the semi-final win against Uruguay, Van Marwijk was speaking to the Dutch media, and he said, which translated into English, to stop Spain, we have to kick Spain. And when I heard him say
Yeah.
that, I said in my living room, I said, it's over. It's over. If they had just played their normal game, they could have won that game. And it was recently Wesley Sneijder was saying that in the dressing room before the final, it was the first time in the tournament that he saw faces in the dressing room that were as white as a sheet. Everybody was as white as a sheet. He said that never happened in the semi-final, never happened in the quarter-final. And if you think as well with 74 and 78, 74, they went 1-0 up. And then Willem van Hanegem, arguably one of the greatest midfielders this country's ever produced. He even said that it wasn't just about beating Germany, it was about humiliating Germany. And I think they forgot to win the game of football. And then obviously Gerd Müller. And then 78 with the dictatorship of Argentina, when you hear many players that played in that game saying that we wouldn't have got out alive. We wouldn't have got out alive if we'd have won. And it's, the third time in South Africa, it's this is an opportunity for the Netherlands, but I don't believe. I think the bravo from Van Gaal, I don't believe it, and I respect him hugely. As I said, I started off my segment.
Too much that's the guy his waist on, because as I said at the start of this, there's
exactly.
Absolutely right. One of the 8 and 9.
Yeah,
but 8 and 9, there's 8 to 7 other teams they've got to rely on having an absolute stinker, basically.
Yeah.
Including Brazil, us in England, the current champions in France, which are potentially recent history in the World Cup dictates that the holders 9 times out of 10, once in a blue moon, they get out the group stage following World Cups. The majority of the time, they win it, come back 4 years later, and they get knocked out straight away. Like we saw 98, France win it, 2002, they got knocked out infamously. Same squad, bit older, but they sort of struggled. They got knocked out. Italy won the World Cup 2006. 4 years later, got knocked out the easiest group they could have been given, and haven't been in the World Cup since, I don't think. Or they haven't been in the World Cup since that day, since they got knocked out. And Spain then eventually, when Spain broke the curse and won the World Cup 4 years in South Africa, 4 years later in Brazil, they get knocked out. Was it Brazil? Either way, they get knocked out. And then Germany done the won the World Cup in Brazil against Argentina. And then, as I was going to say, the last World Cup wasn't exactly the hardest group to get out of, but the history dictated, and they bent the knee to the history and went, okay. And then we all knew what happened afterwards within the national team. It all sort of dismantled and fell apart, and they're only just getting back. I don't think Germany will be one of the teams to win it, but they're only just starting to get their heads around what happened 4 years ago and rebuild again.
Yes, I agree. I agree, Ryan. I think this German side, I think they're going to be they're going to be on for the Euros. I think one of the next 2 Euros, I think, will go to Germany. I think my prediction is Brazil. My money has gone on Brazil.
You mentioned
this is their time. This is their time. When you look back through history, it's always a combination of the best manager and the best squad. And I put the emphasis on combination. And I just think with Tite having the 4 years, they were really unlucky against Belgium. I think with Lucas Paquetá, with Neymar, with the team they've picked as well, Edison Militao, they've got some great players. And I just think that the togetherness will see them home. I really do. I think that this is their time. And I just think that it would be healthy for football as well if they do win it. And I think, Brazil not having won a World Cup since 2002, they didn't win between 1970 and 1994. That was 24 years. And I think this is their time. I think to touch on Argentina as well, for all the fanboys, for all the YouTube people that love Messi, it's Messi and 10 others. I tell you now. Do you want to know the reason why they won't win it?
Because literally they don't have the same thing. It's literally everything's put on. Ever since he was a kid, 2006, I think 2006 was his first World Cup, I think it was.
Yeah, and he was on the
And
bench.
look at the players he had around him, but it's always the emphasis is always on Messi. Look at the managers they've had. Maradona was a manager, but I think it was put on Messi. It's like because Maradona achieved it as a player, and the comparison of Maradona Messi as a country. And if Messi never won a World Cup, how much of a how can I put it? How much of a shame it would be, based, even though he's achieved everything he's achieved in his career. That would be a mark on his career from an Argentinian perspective. But the squad has never been that great of a squad in all them years that he's been in it anyway. And the managers have been, again, with all due respect to Maradona, he's never been a manager properly.
No, he was the inspiration on the sideline. Is what he was.
Yeah, basically, and then that didn't work out, so we got rid of him, and they're just constantly doing that.
Not picking Veron. I backed Argentina to win that World Cup, and I remember visiting family in Ireland, and we had to do an errand in the morning, and I asked my uncle. I said, "Is Veron playing?" He said, "No." I said, "That's Germany through then." And the reason why I asked you why Argentina won't win it, the manager, Lionel Scaloni, who West Ham fans will remember, played for West Ham, played for Racing Santander, played for Deportivo La Coruña. He was a caretaker manager of Argentina. History will tell you that the coach that wins it is the one with the most experience, because they may well be 36 games unbeaten. They may well be. But when it comes to reading a game of football, and I mean reading a game of football, Scolari could do it, Del Bosque could do it, Zagallo could do it, Jacquet could do it, Lowe could do it, Alf Ramsey could do it, and they all won the thing. Because you can read a game of football and anticipate what's going to happen. And I don't believe that Scaloni can do that when it really, really, really matters. So that's why I don't think that they will win it. My money is on Brazil. I think the surprises will be Uruguay and Tunisia. I think Tunisia, I think that it's great that all the African nations have a coach from their own country, which I said earlier. They look really good, Tunisia. I like them. I think they're a hard team. They're a hard team to play against. They're traditionally known as the Germans of Africa. That they're hard to beat. They're hard to break down. And I think Tunisia will do well. I think their coach has been around for a long time. He's a clever man. They've had good African Cups of Nations as well. And Uruguay, when I looked at that squad, Ryan, that looked like a lovely cake that you buy at a bakery. When I looked at that squad, I was like, that looks fantastic. That looks like if you go to a bakery and buy a nice cake, you think, oh, that's lovely. If you go to an art gallery and you see a lovely painting, oh, that's lovely. When I looked at that Uruguay squad, I smiled and I thought that looks really, really good. And for a nation of 3 million, I think they can go for their third title. And you have to remember, 2 of the last 3 World Cups, they've been the best South American side. And if they come up against Brazil,
I mean, one of them they technically cheated and got away with it. One of them.
Yes, I don't condone that.
No. I'm just saying, at one moment they got yeah.
But they would have, if the 4 players that hadn't have been suspended had played, it would have been a Spain-Uruguay final. With I believe Fuchile didn't play and Suarez didn't play.
Suarez was suspended because he got their carded. Yeah.
And they're going for their third world title. They're going for it. And I think what needs to be said about Uruguay as well, Ryan, they were struggling in the qualification, and they gambled to get rid of Tabarez and replace him with Diego Alonso, and it worked out. Colombia didn't do that. Colombia failed to qualify.
Yeah.
And there are the fine margins. I have a Colombian friend of mine and he still talks about 2018, and I agree with him. But I also say to him that if Uribe hadn't have gone for the postage stamp and just put the ball down the middle, it would have been England out in the last 16 and not Colombia. You don't have to go for the postage stamp. So I think Uruguay, Diego Godin as well, he's one of the best defenders I've ever seen.
The last World Cup as well, possibly.
Yeah, but he's one of the. We spoke about Arsenal in earlier on. We touched on Arsenal in this podcast. That semi-final performance against Arsenal for Atletico in 2008, in 2019 was absolutely tremendous. You know,
there's no doubt.
He was every single cross, got it away. And I saw him play for Villarreal against Real Madrid in 2010, and I thought he's a good player. I didn't realise he was going to be that good. He's just, I mean, I wanted him at Arsenal, and he went to Inter Milan, but he's a brilliant captain.
He's that sort of South American grit that we at the time didn't have and we needed, and
exactly, and just the cleverness is just marshalling. I mean, being able to marshal a defence. You know, you get there, you tuck in there, you watch him there, and I think that Darwin Núñez as well, and Muslera, the goalkeeper, he's been around for a long time. I think Uruguay. I think if they get it right, I think it's the latter stages for them. I really do think, and I hope they do well.
Yeah, I think out of the African team, I think Senegal, being AFCON, even though I think Mane's injured, isn't he? So I don't think he managed to go to the World Cup in the end. Got a last minute injury. I'm not sure. But I think Senegal.
As far as I'm aware, he's been taken, and they think he will play some part, which I can understand. Can understand Alois Cisse doing, and I can understand the frustration of Bayern. But you've got to think of the player as well, you know.
Yeah.
And
but also keeping the team morale as well.
Yeah, exactly. But they've got other good players as well. It's not just
Mane. Oh no, that's what I'm saying. That I was about to say that aside, because I weren't sure if he'd been picked or not taken. I do think they perform well in the World Cup as well. They're one to watch, and I can't believe I'm going to say that, but one not to watch is going to be England. I think they're going to be the downfall of Southgate's going to start this November in a couple of days, starting in a couple of days' time against Iran. They've got USA and Derby against Wales.
Yes, the third game.
Yeah, I think we get out of the group by the skin of our teeth if we the way form's going for us at the moment. But I said this to you yesterday, and then since then I've actually remembered we got knocked out. So I don't think the FA do anything actually. But if we fail to qualify past the group stage or even the first knockout round, I've said to you he has to go. Anything less than a quarter final is a failure, to be honest. When you consider the last two international tournaments we've had, we got to a final and a semi-final respectively, World Cup and Euros respectively. To then go from that and then go and then our form just dip where it has been, and just it doesn't bode well. But then when I say all this, I'm then remembering that Roy Hodgson was in charge was it the Brazil World Cup?
Yeah, 2014 with a group
group stage.
Italy.
I know it was a harder group, but might be a harder group, but we finished bottom of that group, and that was a Uruguay, Italy, and I think
Costa Rica.
Costa Rica. And we finished bottom
and
of the group.
We drew 0-0 Costa Rica. And they topped the group, and they took the Netherlands to penalties. And I think you make some great points about Southgate. For me, I can't believe he's still in a job after the worst result in 96 years. Surely that is a sackable offence. I'm convinced if that game would have been played at Wembley and not at Molineux, there would have been more clamour. But that shouldn't take away the fact. First and foremost, it was a wonderful performance by Hungary. Wonderful performance by Hungary.
Wanted it more.
But to have your worst performance in 96 years, there's got to be some ramifications. I mean, when we look back on our England's managers, you know, Glenn Hoddle and Sir Bobby Robson, you know, and I remember Graham Taylor as well. I'm really pleased that we have an English manager, because when we had Capello and when we had Ericsson, I distanced myself. And I would tell people that you wouldn't have a foreign prime minister, would you? And they're like, no. I said, well then. I said, it's the same thing. You wouldn't have Macron being in charge of Great Britain. You wouldn't have Rishi Sunak being in charge of France, would you? I touched on Uruguay. They've never had a foreign manager. Got a country of 3 million people. They've never had one. Because why? Because it's us. It's not us with somebody else. It's us. And that's what it should be. And when they get success, it's everybody's success. So I was pleased that Southgate is someone from England, one of us, because it's really important. It's so important. If we're going to blur the lines, then what are we doing? Why are we having international football? You got to think about the success when you have it. The whole country shares in it. And we talk about education. We talk about educating and hoping that people will understand and realizing what they think is wrong. That also equates to football nations. That also equates to players. That also equates to many different things, and it goes through society. But I mean, I still can't quite believe that the FA have got you've got a short list of Sam Allardyce, Alan Kirbishley, and Steve McClaren, and you choose Steve McClaren. I mean, Charlton fans, I got really annoyed with Kirbishley at a certain point, because it's a waste of talent. As someone who's that good, and he is. I mean, Kirbishley is a brilliant football manager. I mean, when he was in charge of West Ham, he was doing amazing things. You know, what he did with Charlton. And he was linked with so many jobs, but it was as if he didn't want one. And then when the one he wanted, he didn't get. And I would have given him that job long before 2008, but I'm not part of the FA. And, you know, you think with the next round of who's in the frame for England manager, it's got to be someone who's English. It's got to be. And people say, oh, it doesn't matter. There's a section of the Netherlands pushing for it, or they were pushing for it once again when Van Gaal announced he was leaving. They were saying, oh, we'd love Pep Guardiola, we'd love Arsene Wenger. And I said to a colleague of mine, I said, do you know what it's like to sit down and watch a press conference with your national team and have your manager not speak a word of your language? So it's not very nice. Not very nice at all. And, you know, I said, once you sell your soul, it's really difficult to get it back. Once you sell your soul. And if you look at the nations, if you look at Brazil, for example, when I was about to say when then, if Brazil win it, the whole country is in on that, because it's their flag, our people, we've done it. The same if Uruguay win it, the same if France win it again. And it's something which is really important. And I can't stress enough how important it is. And people love to say, oh, it's not important. Maybe not be important at club level, but we're talking about national level, international level. I don't have a Dutch passport, much to the disbelief of my friends and colleagues. I have since Brexit, I have my Dutch living and work permit, which I have to show when I arrive at Schiphol. And every single time when I have to hand it over, along with my Dutch passport, and I start speaking to them in Dutch, and they pay me lovely compliments and those lovely things that people say at passport control, because they don't expect a British person to be so good. I am what I am. I am a British guy who moved to the Netherlands. I will always be grateful for what this country has done for me, but I remain an Englishman from London, and that's what I am. I'm a gooner, you know. And I think with international football, I know that immigration worldwide, I know that's a thing now. That's across the whole world, and everybody is welcome. But you must stay true to yourself. And I do find it really disheartening when it's no longer about the honour. It's about minutes. Oh, I don't get minutes for this country, therefore if I change, I'll get minutes. But if you go back into history, it's the pride. And the pride still exists in African countries, in South American African countries in particular. And I just think that we've got to remember that in this World Cup. You know, pride is such an important thing. It really is. And I think there's going to be so many stories to talk about and so many things to speak about. Before we go, Ryan, you never told me who your prediction was to win it. So can you tell me who you think will win it, please?
Oh my God, right, no pressure. Whilst I'm thinking about it, I'm just going to say, add on to that, it was going to say now, right, window. I'm trying to think. Tom said that Goon out news guy's too good to be true. What do you expect? Is an Arsenal channel more first and foremost? No, in terms of the England manager side of things, I've always said, and I've got a lot of stick on this channel from the regulars and people passing through and all that. Oh, but he's got us to the semi-final. He's got us to the Euros final. Yeah, fantastic. Right. And he has changed certain things that we needed to change in terms of the stuff going on behind the scenes. Right. In terms of the divide and the rivalries at club level, integrating in the international team. We sorted all that. Fantastic. But you made a great point yesterday. For someone that was sacked in 2009, got relegated in 2009 and didn't have a job until 6 months prior to getting the senior England men's job after Allardyce got caught out doing what he was doing, it never boded well for me, and it takes a bit of a shine off being England manager, because the whole point of being given that that prestigious role, and it is one, because there's only one role, and you got one opportunity, quite literally, in some cases, and for you to be normally to have that sort of chance to be, you've got to have done something to get the attention of the FA in the first place. The can try and justify it they want, but what did Southgate do to justify it? He came in, he took over into them, and he had an easy run of fixtures against Scotland and some San Marino and things like that. The games were going to win anyway, even if it was literally. Full due respect, you could have put me or you or the average fan in charge of that England squad and just gone, look, out you go, play your game, you're going to win. In that case, and we could have got the England job. It was them sort of opponents we had at the time. Full due respect to Scotland, San Marino, but come on. It just seemed like because he got the results, the easy option after what happened to Sam. And even Sam Allardyce, when he got appointed, it was bizarre, because he'd gone from Roy Hodgson and what happened then, the whole fallout from Iceland and all that, and the previous World Cup before, to then go for a manager in Sam Allardyce, who you last mentioned was touted for the England job in the top three back in 2008. And then we fast forward to 8 years later, and didn't the FA go, we didn't think it was good enough for 8 years ago, but here's a job now. Takes charge of one job, then gets caught out by the media trying to suggest to people how to do backhanded things and all that. They sack him, and then they go, you will do, basically. And it's just like the FA now, like the people upstairs are so they're content. They're not. They put these things in place, like I can't remember, it was now. One of the top dogs came out and said the FA want England to win an FA. They want England to win the World Cup by at least 2026. So that basically leaves this World Cup and the next one. After that, your milestone, if you don't achieve that, is out the window then, and everything you've put in place up till then just. But people then go, oh, who's been, as you say, who's out there? From an English perspective, who's out there? And you've got to say at the moment, as you've mentioned at great length before in previous shows, Graham Potter, who's now at Chelsea. It's got a bit of a sticky patch, but again, he's having to take over a situation where the club historically only wants to play a certain way, completely different to how he wants to play free-flowing, attacking football.
Yeah.
If he was still at Brighton, no doubt, and you go, you know what, you've done a great job there. Your career's been really, really good as well. If you want it, the job's yours, and he took it.
Yeah.
This squad of players, you cannot tell me it'd be so much better to watch the football because he has the players at his disposal. The goals are if he's scoring goals, we've got Saka, Kane, Grealish, Jude Bellingham, he wouldn't. And this is another thing with Graham Potter I don't like about Southgate, but Graham Potter, even Eddie Howe, I'd throw in there as well nowadays.
Yeah.
They won't do. They're not going to make the mistake of what we're now seeing with Southgate and having favourites. Or you haven't done me wrong before.
Or the inner circle.
But I'm going to stick by you no matter what. I mean, I did a massive rant yesterday because obviously the squad numbers have been released in the last couple of days, and in the last Euros, as mentioned about Ramsdale, he's saying obviously I was the third choice player, so that's kind of the cannon for the goalkeeper there for morale, basically. He goes to Arsenal, becomes a number 2 based on his performances last season. He became the number 2 based on that. And he was pushing for the number 1 spot because of how Pickford and were performing, club level. Plays a couple of games, and because it feels like, for me, I might be wrong, it might be just me being paranoid, but it feels like because he was in the 11 that lost to Hungary at Wolves, that he's been punished since then. Because, as I say, he was in goal, he had the number 1 jersey for today, we lost 4-0. None of the goals, in my opinion, were his fault, by the way. None of them. But we'll get to that later. Yeah. He's now number 3 again. Nick Pope, who's 30, who will not be a goalkeeper at all in the next World Cup, more likely, because of his age. Because he'll be 34, 35 by then. I don't know when his birthday, what side of the year his birthday falls on. So he'll be 34, 35. So he won't be more likely playing international football by then. Pickford, I've never rated Pickford as a goalkeeper anyway, especially I mentioned this yesterday, especially for an international level where we know the standard. We've seen the Peter Shiltons and the David Seamans of this world. They are the standard of goalkeeper, consistent night. When they're number 1, you know they're number 1. There's no one really dishonest. Pickford's number 1. Pickford got made number 1 on the eve of the World Cup, the last World Cup, just because of the number, based on the number that he was given. And at no point have we ever felt, at any point, especially in the last 12 months, he's secure as England number 1. In terms of form, in terms of performances, consistently for his club, there's been questions on him because of how well Ramsdale's been doing. Yeah, Gareth Southgate has shown blind faith in the guy. Yeah, every now and then, don't get me wrong, every now and then Pickford does pull his performances out of his backside, and right, he gets to pull it right. So for that, fair enough. But it just aggs me that he got Harry Maguire's in the squad, and then he can't. How can you take players that can't even get into a Man United squad? Under Erik ten Hag as well, who's trying to rebuild it and resculpture the club to start competing again. The club captain can't even get into United's squad, but you're taking to a World Cup. But
it's in a circle.
Someone like Tomori, who's won Serie A, and
he's playing really well for AC Milan. AC Milan.
Yeah, one of the best centre backs as well, and one of the best centre backs in Europe, doesn't get picked. But when Gareth asked a question about why is Tammy Abrams not in the squad, but he actually puts himself in it though, because he goes, "Oh well, he isn't scoring. He's not in good form. He hasn't got a month to prepare to get himself into form for the World Cup. He's literally weak all." But then you're picking X, Y, and Z though. You're contradicting yourself, and that's been my biggest frustration, especially in the last 12 months. I will answer your question, but I do apologise. But I just wanted to get this out there before the World Cup because this has been my biggest frustration, that he contradicts himself so much, and it aggravates me because they all come in, all these, be it Southgate, Spain, Capello, Roy Hodgson, they all come in and say, we're going to pick our players based on form, in terms of the squad, based on their form at that time. And they never do. They always, at some point, they go back on it and they try justifying it, or they never let me down.
I think as well what Southgate did to Ivan Toney was also cruel. You know, for a player to play for Peterborough and Brentford,
That did ag me.
Yeah, and to see the smile in his press conference when he's wearing that England's polo shirt, and he's talking about his sister and his mum and his family and the pride. Didn't even give him any minutes.
No.
What you pick him for then? So he thinks he's, the pride of reaching that and then not even using him. Like with Bamford, he gave Bamford a very short time against
a little cameo, like 5-minute cameo, wasn't it?
Yeah, a 5-minute cameo against a difficult opponent, and against a lesser opponent, he gives them no minutes at all. But unfortunately, they are not part of the inner circle. And as for Tammy Abraham not being on form, what kind of education do you think that Tammy Abraham is getting in Italy? The league is getting stronger. He's playing for one of the biggest clubs. I mean, I remember interviewing Luke Chambers, who came up against him when he was playing for Aston Villa in the Championship, and he was saying that watch his career. He's gonna skyrocket. And you touched on Graham Potter. When I spoke to Graham Potter in 2018 when he was manager of Ostersund's, his ambition was to get them playing Champions League football. He wasn't thinking about leaving. He was happy where he was, and he wanted to get them into the Champions League. And Graham Potter, I think, yes, they're going through a sticky patch at the minute, but I think Chelsea need to be commended for giving a top English manager an opportunity. They need to be commended for that. Yes, they're going through a sticky patch, but they will get better. And as for Sam Allardyce, I do appreciate his honesty. That he now says that there'll be times he'll never get over it. Which who would? What man would get over it? Being England manager, not being able to lead your side out at Wembley. And, he even says, sometimes he stares into the abyss, and I appreciate his honesty because that's what we would all do, and I don't think he'll get another chance and he will just have to learn to live with it. But, I hope that England have a good tournament. And I hope that we do the best we can, but certainly can't see us winning it. And any news on that prediction, Ryan, or you had to think about it a little bit, or are you still on the spot?
I'm trying to think. I don't think France will win it. I'm trying to think. Spain way off. Spain are way, way off. Argentina don't win it because they're based on one player. It's never worked in how many years? Germany 4 years too early to even compete for the World Cup at the level they want to. Fuck's sake. If England don't win it, which I don't think they will, because of Southgate, we'll get onto the reasons why later on, before you wrap things up. I've got to say Brazil. I've got to say it. Stick with you, side of you, and say Brazil, because even though I have my doubts about their defensive selections in terms of the age of the players they're taking, in terms of it's not their first choice. They play back four, back five. If they play back four, they basically got four players that are pushing the 40s, and you would like to think he's not going to play all four of them at the same time.
No,
because that would be asking for trouble in terms of going up against teams with pace or energy and things like that. So you'd think they'd balance it out, but it's just having certain players like Dani Alves, even though what he's done at domestic level for his career in terms of what he did at Barcelona, being part of that great Barcelona team, Thiago Silva as well. The one thing that they have against them now, that they have against them two in particular, is their pace net. They've lost that yard of pace they once had. And Thiago has proved himself Premier League level that he can deal with that. He can deal with the speed of the game still. He can read the game. I can't disagree that. But Brazil, other than that, as a whole, are perfectly set up for this. It'll be a massive shock if they don't, because they won't get a better chance too. Because as I say, like come the next World Cup in the USA, Canada, Mexico trio World Cup, yeah. Come that World Cup, you're going to have the European giants ready again. Germany will be ready. Hopefully, we'll be ready. Hopefully, depending on who our manager is. Hopefully, Spain
and another 16 teams.
Yeah, another 16 teams. Spain will be ready. France will be there.
Yeah, and well, it depends on the draw, but then you're going to have 48 nations, and I don't think Dani Alves will start.
How's the qualifying going to work out as well? Because it's always been like the team finishes top of the group qualifies automatically. Yeah. It's like the second teams have to do playoffs. How's it going to work? You're adding more teams to this World Cup now after this one.
As far as I'm aware, off the top of my head, Ryan, 16 nations will be from Europe, and then South America, Asia, and Africa as well. And people are saying, "Oh, it should have happened a long, long time ago." But obviously, with the history of FIFA, it will be very interesting to see how things work out. And I hope you've enjoyed the chat tonight. I know that I have. And I hope everybody else has enjoyed it. I will leave everybody by saying that I hope everybody enjoys the World Cup. We've got to enjoy it.
From a football perspective, obviously, there's other things we can discuss as the tournament goes on. And
yeah, but just enjoy as a football fan. It's there for you to enjoy. And I reiterate once again, for the people saying, "Oh, I'm not going to watch it." If you are a football fan, of course you will watch it. This is a moment in time. You know, the next World Cup will see me in my 40s. I watched the first one when I was 6. You know, and it's a moment in time. It's part of life, and I hope that everybody watching tonight, I hope they've enjoyed it. I hope they enjoy the World Cup. And I'll say what I say to most people as well. In a world where if you don't side with the Team Messi or Team Ronaldo, there's other players playing in that World Cup that you might not know. Yeah. So give them a shout. You know, talk about them. I mean, I can't wait to dissect about what happens with Van Gaal. I might be translating some of his press conferences, but that's not yet known. We're waiting to see what will happen with that. But even then, you have a responsibility to tell the truth. It's something which it's really important. I mean, I've translated many Dutch to English press conferences through the years. It's not about me. It's about what he says. No. So I hope that we all enjoy the World Cup. And, you know, this is going to be one full of surprises all the way up until the final on the 18th of December.
Yeah, James is not James. Gary in the chat's asking, James, should I send half the box of tissues I'm sending Ryan to you so you have something to wipe your tears away when you play the USA?
Well, thank you for the suggestion. I prefer a box of chocolates, I reckon. But I am first and foremost, I'm an Arsenal supporter. I've been supporting Arsenal since I was 6 years old. And obviously, being English, I want England to do well. But I also live abroad. So I've got to contend with the country where I live, which is the Netherlands. So a great suggestion. I hope the USA have a good World Cup. I wish the United States all the best. And I believe they will get through their group. I don't dispute that whatsoever.
Just before we go, can I just ask your thoughts on what's happened in the last few days with Ronaldo and this interview he's done with Piers Morgan and how it comes across to you? Because obviously you do what you do in your career, and he's a player. He's not a retired footballer or anything like that. He's not far from it, but you know what I'm saying. He's not retired. He's contracted to the club, but he's criticised and things like that. But he's come out. It's like he's trying to force the move now. Like, he's trying to force him to just tear the contract so he can go wherever he wants to go, place or whatever. But how, if your perspective, not a buyer now, because obviously they tear the contract, but your perspective, you're going to sign this Cristiano Ronaldo. Yes, you'll make your money back on the selling his shirt and all that. But there's always going to be that niggling thing back of their heads, any owner's back of their heads now is, if he doesn't get his way here, he's going to do another interview and throw us under the bus. It doesn't look good for business on their perspective. I was going to say, what have you made of this since it's come out? What, it's Sunday evening? It all leaked out that this was coming.
Well, first and foremost, it's a team game. It's a team game. However world class the individuals are that make the difference, it's a team game. I think he dropped a clanger not returning to Sporting Lisbon from Juventus. You know, to return to Portugal and finish off your career there, help Sporting Lisbon improve in a European sense. I think he will have a good World Cup, and I think he'll do well for Portugal. They're very restless about their manager Fernando Santos, but when you've got such good players, and I see that people are predicting a Portugal-Argentina final again, the Messi Ronaldo. I don't think either of them will win the World Cup. But Eusebio didn't win it. Cruyff didn't win it. George Best didn't win it. But it hasn't tarnished their legacy, is it? People still talk about them now. You don't have to win the World Cup to secure your legacy. You don't.
No, Gascoigne. Paul Gascoigne,
yes,
one of the greatest players we've ever produced.
He only played in one. Yeah. And he only played in one. And Gascoigne only played in one. So I just think that the people are getting carried away with themselves. I think the way you do an interview is really important. You know, I mean, I'm a little bit old-fashioned where, you know, I've spoken to over 400 professionals through the years from all levels of world football. I do it in foreign languages as well. When I speak to a player from the men's game, from the women's game, first and foremost, the player's got to feel comfortable. They've got to know that it's not just about football, it's about the human element. They've got to know about the journey that a player has been on. I mean, if I tell you now that Andries Noppert, who's in the Dutch squad, you know, did you know that his car was stolen when he was at Foggia? A professional footballer, his car was stolen, and they rang him up and they said to him, if you want your car back, it'll cost you €10,000. And even then, you'd only get the skeleton of your car. And he was shocked. He was like, what's going on here? I'm just here to play football. But this is what I mean about the human side of when you speak to players. You know, when you speak to, Simon Barker, who was when I spoke to him, assistant chief executive of the PFA, and he was saying that at the full Members' Cup, you know, when he was man of the match, and he thought, I'll return to Wembley many, many times in my life. He was told by Don Howe that he would be drafted into the England squad under Sir Bobby Robson. And the following league game, he broke his leg and he never got to play for England. So this is what I mean about the human side of things. And I mean, obviously my interviews are all written. You know, I don't do anything with YouTube, although people look at me like I'm an alien. But I maintain that when you interview Dutch players and managers in their mother tongue and Spanish players and managers in their mother tongue, it wouldn't shine through on YouTube. It wouldn't. And I like to go out of my way to look at, you know, the history. You know, Sunday Elise, who played in a World Cup, and was talking about Rashid Yekini, who's sadly no longer with us. And he was saying, you know, he would kick the ball, and the sound that the ball would make when he would shoot, it'd be like whoosh. And I went out of my way to check where Rashid Yekini played. He played for Gijón in Spain, because for all I know, his family could have been reading that interview. And they think, oh, someone has gone out of their way to put a special piece in about what he achieved. And I just think with the constant media attention now, it's just 24/7, the bright lights, things taking out of context as well. And when interviews are done in foreign languages and people say, oh, he said this. No, he didn't. He didn't say that at all. What he actually said was this. And as I say, that's why I'm always in awe of the likes of Tim Vickery. You know, he does an amazing job as a South American correspondent, where he will always tell you the truth. There's no airs and graces. It's not about him. And that's why he's in such demand, because he's nothing short of world class. You know, when you look at Sid Lowe and Graham Hunter, when they cover Spanish football, they both have the language learnt to the best of their ability, and they're both absolutely amazing. And it's no coincidence. You know, I've tried to, you know, someone who's got the full Dutch language as well. You know, it's no coincidence that the best of the best have got complete control of the language of the country they live in. So therefore, when they're translating press conferences, when they're giving information, they're telling the truth, which is something which is very important. So I hope that continues. I think Ronaldo will have a good World Cup, and whether he wins it or whether he doesn't, his legacy won't be tarnished. The same with Messi. And you have to remember as well, it's a team game. And in the words of a player that I spoke to, and Graziano Minari, who played with Van Basten, Gullit and Rijkaard, was coached under Arrigo Sacchi and part of that amazing Milan side. Okay, he didn't play every game, but he was part of that squad. And I'll leave you with this. He said to me, even the best champions have to learn to play together. And I think that's very apt for Cristiano Ronaldo's interview.
Yeah, and yeah, I couldn't put him up because you've got the second part's going to come out tonight in a couple of hours' time, or the next day or whatever. But if anyone else has watched the whole of the first part, it does come across a bit of a worries me sort of interview at the World's Against Media Club. It does touch on other things, personal things. Obviously, the loss of his son and his youngest daughter's health and all that. That you can put that to a side. To the footballing perspective, it's just when they do talk about the football side of things, it's worries Cristiano. Oh, poor little thing. And I'm just like, you're being paid X amount just by the club alone, X amount of hundreds of thousands or whatever, just plus sponsorship deals, this, that. Is it really that bad that you've now got to go out your way to do just on the eve of a World Cup as well? You've got to do this to divert your attention and put a massive light on the club that you came to love, where the man that made your career is still working at. Maybe retired as a manager, but he's still there on the wage bill as a director and all that. So it doesn't, for someone that loves Sir Alex Ferguson so much and claims that in an interview, it doesn't bode well. It doesn't for me. It doesn't come across like you do, because you're then going, you love him so much, and he is there still. You wouldn't have done what you've done. You would have waited until the end of your career, be it after this World Cup, no matter what happens, if you retire, whatever, and then go, Piers, right, now I want to do an interview. I'm not with football anymore. Just me and you, ex-footballer to a media guy. We both speak English fluently. Let's go, and then do whatever. But to do it when you're still playing and cause a lot of controversy by doing it hasn't gone down well. But there's a human part of it that you've got to take away from the footballing side of the part of the interview that some people are struggling to do, but you have to, because it does involve two young kids at this moment in time. One that didn't make it, basically, and there's the daughter, the youngest daughter that he's looking after with his partner and the older siblings. With the rest of his family, you've got that perspective. You've got to pull to one side and go, okay, from that perspective, from a human perspective, you've got to go, oh, you've been through that. That's a rough time, but can understand that. The club should be doing better, this and that. But from the footballing side of things, you come across like it's all about me, and it doesn't bode well from that perspective. But it is what it is. One sec. Gato's asking, we go, would Ferguson have brought in a player at the age and performance of Ronaldo if he was the manager still? He wouldn't have brought Ronaldo back as a player.
No, because Ferguson was the boss. He ran the joint. No, Ferguson was the same. Yeah. Same with Clough at Forest. Yeah, he ran the joint. What he says goes. So that's why. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if Van Nistelrooy, Beckham, Keane, that's it. And that's why Ferguson was so successful. And Ferguson was offered the Barcelona job and the Inter Milan job, and Ferguson rightly said, "I've got no command of either of those languages. how would I get my message across? Because that is something which is so important. You can be the best manager in the world. If you can't get your message across, you're stuffed.
You just, and that's again today. That probably is why you didn't take, because you could imagine what sort of career he would have done at Barcelona and Inter Milan respectively. If he obviously if he could speak the mother tongue and all that, it would be.
Yeah, but the awareness of it is nothing short of incredible.
But this is honest enough to say.
The awareness of the man to say that, and that is why he's the greatest British manager of all time. There's no doubt about that.
No, exactly. And as you say, if he was still manager and he was still in charge when Ronaldo came, Cristiano was being linked to come back, and he did come back. Once he would have had fans of United happy, with all due respect, because it's reuniting too, in that sense. But they'd have been asking questions, well, hang on, why didn't you bring back this one and that one, and Roy Keane and Ilford out there? Why didn't we rekindle things there and bring him back, or David Beckham and It would have opened so many cans of worms. It would have been, as I say, it would have been so unprecedented, because he was always a manager. Once you're gone, you're gone. There's no coming. There was no, you come back for a loan spell, or you come back just to train with us. No, you thought the grass was greener, off you go. No man's bigger than the club. It's like sort of George Graham. It was my way or the highway. But once you are at the door, you are out of the door. You only come back as the away opposition player. That would be it.
Absolutely. It just goes to show it's been really enjoyable tonight, Ryan. Thank you very much, pal. And I'm sure we'll catch up. I'm sure we'll catch up during the World Cup. Yeah,
definitely, mate. And I've got to wrap things up here myself as well, because I know it's just over an hour and a half we've been going. Wednesday on Thursday, aren't we? So tomorrow there's nothing planned, but on Saturday we are doing a watch along. It's the Arsenal women at home. I say at home. It's at the Emirates, so we're technically the home team, but we're playing at the Emirates against Man United women's team. Get my words out eventually. That'd be fantastic. In the WSL, so we'll be covering that here on the channel, as we always do the WSL games and the Women's Champions League, and this and the other. We'll be covering that on Saturday, 5:30 kickoff, I believe it is. So I'll be setting that up soon. And then on Sunday, I will not be doing a watch along for the opening game. The opening game against Qatar and Ecuador, isn't it? Something like that. And then obviously Holland play the next day, in between England, Iran, and USA v Wales. I think Holland play Senegal. Is it Senegal you play? Holland play.
Senegal's the opening game at 5 o'clock local. 5 o'clock local time. So, there's loads of orange bunting around. I think I've got an old Dutch top in one of the wardrobes, so I'll have to get that out and sing along with the Wilhelmus and that kind of thing. And so look forward to it.
I'll just get this down.
If only he was playing. If only he was playing. But
still one of my favourite. It's still one of my favourite goals in general, not just in World Cup, but in general. That goal against Argentina and France '98 in Marseille. Yeah,
amazing, but it's just the culmination of the man's career. I mean, he's the greatest. He's the greatest Arsenal player I've ever seen. He's our greatest ever player, and he needs to be. I used to watch him at Arsenal in the Champions League for £20 a pop, but those were the days. I remember that season: Dortmund, Auxerre, PSV, Ajax, Roma, Valencia. How special was that? And it still pains me, Ryan, that he didn't play a single part in the most important game in our history, and our greatest ever player never played any part, and that will always wrangle with me, always. So
you took him there.
We have the memories, which is the most important thing.
Because it's in Paris, he was able to go, even though it was away in Europe, he was able to go because you could get a train or travel there by car.
Yeah.
He's on the bench. You haven't started him, but he's on the bench. Fair enough. This is it now. He's not staying on for another season either way.
Yeah, this is it.
And I know we're down to 10 men, but it's his last ever game.
Yeah, and Rijkaard put Larson on, and look what happened. And
Yeah, exactly.
the great documentary that Arsenal did with him, where he says that it made me choke a little bit when he said that when he saw Almunia stripping off, he
He knew.
knew that was his chance gone, and it was so sad to hear. I mean,
Yeah.
he's just for a young man who was combining learning to become a physiotherapist together with football, but he gave up. And he thought he could combine the two, but he gave it up because it just wasn't possible.
Feasible, yeah.
Debuting arriving at Ajax at 12, debuting at 17, just an amazing footballer. I've never spoken to him personally, but I have his nephew Roland, who had a career at Excelsior, RKC Waalwijk and Brighton. And I asked Roland Bergkamp, I said, this interview is all about you. I said, but I must ask you about your uncle. I said, he's the greatest player my club has ever known, one of the greatest of his generation. Did he ever give you any special advice? And he said, James, he said, to be honest, I didn't see him very much. He said, but when I would watch him play football, I became a fan. He said, because he would always do something, a goal, an assist. He said, you might not see him for 80 minutes, but he'll give that assist that wins the game. And just a remarkable footballer, and just so proud to have seen him play for my club, and to now live in his hometown is also a privilege. To speak his mother tongue is also a privilege, and whether I'll get to interview him one day, I'm not so sure. But what will be, will be.
Yeah, I think one of the goals that sort of never gets really mentioned was from his last season at Highbury. His last season was against FC Thun on match day 1.
Yeah,
and the way that ball, he gets that ball, he just brings it down, does all the twist and turning, and literally as he's lost his foot, he's slipping over, it still ends at that shot off in the dying embers of the game. It's just, again, it was what, I think now 36 when he retired. So
37, I believe.
So yeah, but at the time of the season, 36. So he's 36 and 37. Either way, to have that agility and still have that demand of the ball, like bringing it down as a deft touch, boom, and then and even when you're falling against your body weight's going against you to get a shot and still score. You can't just get that. That's talent. That's natural, basically. Yeah. And then there's other great goals I mentioned. Obviously, the goal in Marseille for Holland, the goal against Newcastle. We mentioned all these great goals he's ever scored against Southampton, Leicester. That's the City the hat trick literally against Leicester City later on in that month. Literally first, second, and third for goal in a month. The only player in Premier League history, still to this day, to have that achievement
that will never be broken. Never.
We can't be broken.
Never be broken. And just be grateful that we've seen him. And thanks for a wonderful show, Ryan. Really enjoyed it, pal.
No worries,
and,
mate.
Enjoy the World Cup, everybody. Have fun.
I did say wrap up, but I keep in on about Bergkamp now. But as I say, we will be back on Saturday for the match day watch along, as I mentioned before, for the women's game against the Man United at the Emirates. Sunday, we are not touching the opening game because I think it's going to be a ball draw more likely. And plus, it's just back on Monday for the England versus Iran game. Try and get a few of us together because it's a 1 p.m. kickoff UK time, so it'll be 2 p.m. your time, James.
Yeah.
Then you've got obviously Holland versus Senegal, then USA versus Wales. I won't be able to cover the USA Wales game because I'm going to an event where Beth Mead is doing Beth Mead's doing an event, and then she's doing a book signing afterwards. So I'm going to get to meet her as well.
Yes, tell her I said hello.
I will. If I get to, I'll mention you, and I'll definitely say I know.
I interviewed her a while ago now, but she was ever so kind to respond to my message when I congratulated her on winning the Euros. So I was quite pleased with that. So I don't know if she'll remember me, but you can always say my mate James Rowe interviewed you a while back and he sends his regards, and she might say, "Oh, I remember James." You never know, but have fun anyway.
I will do, and then I think that the rest of the week I'll play out because I know there's a Women's Champions League game against Juventus on Wednesday, I believe. I'll cover that as well. And then World Cup games will come if they're watchable, but apart from obviously England games, obviously we'll cover to 25th being the marquee one at the moment, because it is me versus Gary, basically England versus USA. Aside from that, I hope you all enjoyed this, guys. And if you have, do smash that like button and do drive up the sharing of this stream, because it does massively help the algorithm of YouTube putting it out there themselves as well. And smash that like button, absolutely obliterate the like button as well while you're at it. And we'll see you on the other side. If you're new to the channel, do subscribe, do want to become a member. It's 99p or £2.99. It's all there for you. I'll be sorting out the emoji side of things over the next couple of days for that side of things as well. So bear with me on that. And I'll see you soon, guys. As always, up the Arsenal. Come on, you Gunners.
All the best. Enjoy the World Cup, everyone.